I think it's true that everybody loves to hate the FIA for some reason or another. The international sanctioning body for motorsport, with exception to a few different series, looking at you, well, most American sporting series, they have this kind of reputation, be that in the likes of Formula 1 or WRC or Endurance or Formula E, where they seem to do things without thinking as thoroughly as they probably could have. And I think an example for me is typically in Formula 1, but this past weekend in Monaco kind of exemplified it. Not necessarily because of the problems with the protests that Ferrari had, where they said Perez and Verstappen crossed the pit exit line. Turned out Perez didn't, but Verstappen's tyres started to cross over it. So they put it in using Niels Wittek, the race director, who's of the fame of the likes of DTM, using his work and his race director's notes to go, well, this is what it says. But it turned out the sporting code was made for this year, saying that these parts of the car have to be entirely over the line rather than only partially over the line. And so the investigation was thrown out. But that was a change for this year, and you can go, well, that's just one mistake that the FIA have done. But there have been a couple of other bits and pieces. So, for example, let's look at the Monaco weekend, and let's look at the grid for the race. Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz both had to do changes to their cars, which included a gearbox change, but they did it without penalty. Despite Perez crashing, going into the tunnel, and Sainz crashing into him, causing the end to Q3. Now, this wasn't something that really happened last year. Like, even when, say, Verstappen or Lewis changed something on their cars, Lewis Hamilton went to the back of the grid in Brazil, Max Verstappen went back at Sochi. He went to the back of the grid with a full new power unit when he got his 3-place grid drop for Monza, wasn't it? I might be remembering that wrong. But no, he had the grid drop, didn't he? So he took a whole new power unit in terms of penalty. And this is the thing, they didn't penalise Max or Lewis, or they did, sorry, and they didn't for Carlos or Checo. When they did like a full gearbox change, which is typically what, a 5-10 place grid drop. So even before the race started, there were these kind of inconsistencies, and then there were the inconsistencies on when to call a red flag or when not to call a red flag. And the likes of Mick Schumacher's crash, they kept it behind the safety car for a while before red flagging it, which I just don't understand. Should have been, well, that's a big crash. We can't get that out of the barriers quickly. Let's red flag it, and then they could have maximised the amount of time that they spent racing. Though I think the decision probably was because they have the 3-hour window in which to do 2 hours of racing, and they wanted to maximise the amount of laps they could before red flagging it. So they had some safety car running to get more laps on the counter so we get full points, and then red flag it when they were like, we could easily let them go without the safety car for the rest of the time, but they'll still make the time limit. It's a weird thing, but it's consistently inconsistent. You might think, so on the flip side, you might go, it's unfair if they get a penalty for damage that was caused by this crash because they put in the qualifying performance. I say you have to be there to have put in the performance and to be rewarded with the grid spot. You have to have been there at the end of it and not, crashed. See Charles Leclerc last year where they didn't work on the gearbox. He had an issue and he didn't start the race even though he qualified on pole. That should have been a situation that Ferrari and Red Bull faced on Sunday. You want to change it? Sure, go to the back of the grid. Or start for the pit lane even because you're braking parc ferme. But if you don't want to change it, you run the risk of any kind of damage to the car. So I think it was a bit unfair. But I think this proves something. Because a lot of people were lambasting Michael Massey, and to be fair, I was one of them as well, because, well, look at how he handled the finale, and his team of stewards handled the finale of the 2021 F1 season, where we should have been celebrating, either a record-breaking 8th championship or a record run-ending first championship for Verstappen. We instead had all of these debates, and there was an asterisk put next to Verstappen in a way that, well, the only other ones I think come to mind are Vettel's first title in 2010, but then Petrov was defending like a lion from Alonso. Or Brazil 2008 with Hamilton's first title, which, well, would be quite fitting that Verstappen's first title has such questionable circumstances. But even then, that wasn't something to do with the rules. I think the application of the rules has still been very inconsistent this year. This is a bit on the TV direction, but when Ocon got his penalty, everyone thought it was for the incident at Santa Font. They were like, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? And then you see the actual incident where he's genuinely put Lewis into the pit wall, and they're like, oh, no, that's not harsh. That is deserving of a time penalty. But this is an issue the FIA faces, and it seems like blaming some sassy Australian racing director isn't just the solution. Especially in F1, there are fundamental flaws with the way that the FIA handle things. But let's talk about the solutions another time. Let me know what you think the solutions are in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.